Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint. It's time now to sit back and relax and enjoy international watercolour artist Hazel Soan as she demonstrates her top tips and techniques to show you that no painting is ever lost, simply unfinished.
The freshness and immediacy of watercolour is its chief appeal. But because this is easy to lose, watercolour has earned a reputation as an unforgiving medium. If you knew what you could and couldn't correct, you would find this medium much more forgiving. Paintings that seemed lost can be manipulated safely back to success by a variety of techniques. You can retrieve lost highlights with opaque pigments. Let's use cerulean blue and titanium white to get back a couple of lost highlights from the sky between the foliage. I'm mixing the two colours together because the cerulean on its own is probably going to be too dark. Nice and neat, nice and dry. Could go a bit lighter if we want it to be exactly the same. You wouldn't even know, would you, that those have been added. Sometimes you're not sure just how much to darken something. I often use a coloured crayon. I rub it over the area I think I want to change colour or change tone. Here I want this to go more violet, and then I want this front hill to be darker. If I think that's the right tone, I can prepare the tint to lay it, rub the crayon off, and lay the wash. But sometimes I just leave the crayon. If it looks right, why change it? In this painting of the cloisters, I just couldn't decide whether it was dark or light behind the shades because everything was changing, the light was changing. So I used the crayon to darken up under the shades to see. Once I'd got the crayon there, I thought, well, it looks right. Can you see the crayon? I can hardly see it now. Opaque colours can restore highlights, but if you want to get back that virgin white paper, you can actually scratch off the surface of the paper at the end of a painting. If we want to retrieve some more light in this wet sand, we just scratch the top of the pigment and look what lovely highlights that creates. Most watercolours are staining. Once they're laid in position, they set. But there are some colours that are called lifting colours, and these colours can actually be lifted off from the paper to either lighten their tones or retrieve lost lights. In this painting, the garage at the back was painted with ultramarine and burnt sienna, both notable lifting colours, so I could lift off the colour with a sponge to create the smoke from the fire in the wheelbarrow. Let me show you how to perfect lifting off technique. I've painted the black grapes with a mixture of 3 lifting colours: ultramarine, burnt umber and quinacridone red. And now I'm going to bring the grapes out of the darkness. Not too much water on your brush. Make sure you've got clean kitchen towel to hand. You are effectively lifting the pigment off the paper, but you're painting with water in a way. So you've got to be careful to make sure you don't put too much water on the paper. These are lifting colours, so they will shift with water. Use the brush to shift the pigment. Each time you've got to clean it off, because if you think about it, the pigment on your brush, if you just keep on going round and round and round, that pigment will recolour the area you're trying to clean off. And you can dab this, because this is dried paint. You're not going to disturb the wash. Be aware of where the light is, because what you're doing is reintroducing the light. You've got the darks already. It's kind of the reverse of normal watercolour painting, because this time you're working from dark to light. Keep a clean tissue, so you're dabbing off the colour as you go. And you can go back into areas and get it really light. Use a slightly bigger brush. So you can imagine that you could correct quite fine detail. If we can actually create a painting by lifting it off, you can imagine that you could re-find a balustrade that you'd by mistake painted over. Then you could use a tiny brush and just lift out the balustrades. I changed the mixture slightly over here so it's slightly redder, so the grapes have a slightly different hue. The secret is keeping your brush damp, not too wet, and clean, and lifting any excess pigment off the paper so it can't move into the wrong place or interfere with anything else. I think you can see what I mean by that. So now I'm going to show you that I also use lifting colours in the foliage. Indian yellow, burnt sienna that we've already used, the ultramarine blue that we've already used. So I can actually also lift some veins out of the leaves. Let's use a fine rigger and see how fine we can get that line. In the yellow it won't show so much, but in the green it will show much more clearly. So I'm just going to carry on and do a few more grapes. If you lift out too much or in the wrong place, just remix your colour and use it quite dry because you don't want it to be too wet, and just refine the shape and just softly bring it back. And then if you need to lift it out again, it'll dry very quickly and you can lift out again. Then we can use our opaque white to actually restore the bright highlights on the shiny surface. Always remember to keep your white nice and neat. Otherwise, although it looks white when you lay it, it will dry slightly darker and it won't be so bright. Some of these you can see are drying off. They're not quite as bright as you think they are, so then just do it again over the top. So if you're nervous about using really strong watercolour, use lifting colours, and then you can always lift it back if you have made it too dark. Sometimes a watercolour is irredeemable. If you've lost all the transparency or you've turned it to mud, that's very hard to get back. So, if all else fails, find the best passages in the watercolour, cut them up and make them into a montage.
It's like simple maths. You can always add and subtract to get the correct results. And I hope Hazel has encouraged you to revisit any watercolours you might have given up on and give them a new lease of life. Now, before we take a short break, folks, it's time to get out and about with leading acrylic artist Fraser Scarfe, as he gives us another fascinating insight into the inspiration behind some of his favourite works of art.
Hi, I'm Fraser Scarfe. We're here in London today at Tate Britain, where I'm going to be looking at some of the greatest British artworks of the past 1,000 years and explaining a bit about why they're so important to me. So this is a painting that caught my eye when I first visited the gallery, just because it stands out as being so strange. Now, it's called The Chumley Ladies, and we don't actually know who painted it. It was painted between 1600 and 1610, we think, but that's really all we know about the picture. And it just strikes us as being quite a strange sort of modern image. There's these two ladies sat here with their babies. And at first you'd probably assume that they're twins, but if you look closely, there are actually quite big differences in their faces, their eye colour, the way they're dressed. So we don't really know whether that was the case or not. All we know is here they are, they're two ladies, it's similar in appearance and dress, sat upright with their babies. And the whole composition of the picture is very odd. It's sort of almost architectural. They're just sort of very flat on the canvas, bolt upright, and the artist just going sort of, here they are, look at them. The only real clue as to who these ladies are that the artist has actually given us is here on the bottom corner of the painting. Two ladies of the Chumley family who were born the same day, married the same day, and brought to bed the same day. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this look at one of the masterpieces of British art as much as I have. Join me next time for more Out and About, when I'll be looking at another painting that's inspired me throughout my career and talking a bit more about it.
Well, it's time for a quick break now, folks, but join us in part 4 and Warren Sealey will put the finishing touches to his 17th century portrait. See you soon.